AdamandJP.com.
Right now.
Exploring the multiverse of pop culture.
This is Pod Casserole.
An Adam and JP show.
Well, hello, and welcome to a special Wednesday bonus edition of Pod Casserole. I'm Jay Patrick. Today, we introduce you to the official Pod Casserole Summer Intern 2018, Barrett. Earlier in the year, Barrett wrote us a letter saying that he was in school, listened to the show. When he got out for the summer, he lived close enough to where we do this show, just outside the great town of Nashville, Tennessee. And he said he would love to come by and be our summer intern, do intern things. And we thought about it. Adam and I talked about it. And we said, why not? This could be fun. So the way this is going to work is Barrett is going to get a series of assignments over the summer as our summer intern. Then he will come on the show and share with us his findings with that assignment. Assignment number 1, if we truly are in the new golden age of television, what is the 5 most influential shows in this new golden age of television? He took a couple of weeks, did some research, and then we sat down this past weekend to discuss his findings. Unfortunately, Adam couldn't make this recording. Hopefully, he'll be on the next one, the next time Barrett comes by. So we're going to chat with Barrett coming up. Want to remind you, this Friday, brand new Pod Casserole. I guess it's TV week here on Pod Casserole. We're going to be discussing bad TV premises. Mostly classic television, bad TV premises. Because when you look back in the 70s and 80s, terrible premises, even going back to the 60s. The Flying Nun? Where did that come from? We'll be talking about bad TV premises this Friday on Pod Casserole. And time is running out for you to be part of the Twinkie Challenge 2018. Here's how it works. Currently, on our Apple Podcast reviews, we're sitting at about 40-ish 5-star reviews. We want 50 by June 1st. If we can get 50 by June 1st, I will go on Facebook Live and eat a promotional Twinkie. It is the Key Slime Pie Twinkie that came out for the 2016 Ghostbusters film. Fresh box, never been opened. All the Twinkies are still wrapped. We're going to crack that box open, see what kind of shape those Twinkies are in, as they've sit in my hot garage for about a year now. And then I'm going to eat one on Facebook Live. If we get 55-star reviews on Apple Podcast by June 1st, you make that happen by pausing whatever you're doing right now, grabbing the phone that you're listening to this on, probably going to the Apple Podcast page, if it's an Apple phone, and give us a 5-star review. That's all you got to do. And watch me get sick eating a Twinkie on Facebook Live. So that's coming up on June 1st if we make that goal. We had the Pickle Rick Challenge, which was a little more lofty. We'll discuss that later. We're going to punt that down the road to a date to be determined. So that's coming up maybe later this summer. We'll revisit that challenge. But the Twinkie Challenge stands because we're close. We only need 50. I'm going to shut up and introduce you to the Pod Casserole Summer Intern 2018, Barrett, right now. So, Barrett, you are our official intern for the summer of 2018.
Yes, I am. It's so good to be here. I'm super excited as to this journey into mystery that I'm about to engage on. This amazing fantasy.
After you've seen the studio, I hope the magic isn't slowly dwindling away.
Oh no, that's a bonus. I love it here.
It's okay. It's all right. Where do you go to school, first of all?
Harding University in the town of Searcy, Arkansas.
And you're studying?
English. I'm an English major with a writing minor.
And you'll be going into your sophomore year, correct? Or
senior year, actually.
Senior year. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Next semester is my first of senior year.
Oh, wow. Well, congratulations.
Yes, I'm a senior citizen now. I'm an old man.
And so in your studies, like as you graduate, now once you'll be graduating with the Bachelor of
Arts, I believe.
Bachelor of Arts, a BA. Now, are you going to pursue a master's degree after that?
I might. It's possible. I don't have anything set in stone right now. I'm still currently formulating those plans.
Okay.
Anything's possible.
So what do you want to do?
Well, my dream ever since I've been a kid is to be a writer, specifically a writer of fiction. That's for just about any medium. I mean, I've got ideas for screenplays, for film and TV. I want to be a comic writer. I want to be a novelist. Just any form of writing you can do, even like video games, stuff like that. If it's a medium, I want to write it. And just about. I'm a big dreamer.
And who are some of your influences, writers?
Well, I think first and foremost, Stan Lee.
Okay.
The guy was a genius with how just the sheer creativity he put into creating his world and his characters, stuff like that. And of course, Jack Kirby, his number one collaborator. Let's see, who else? Obviously got to mention the greats, Tolkien, Rowling, Martin, the great fantasy authors. Speaking of fantasy, one of my biggest influences is kind of a lesser-known author, Patrick Rothfuss, author of the Name of the Wind series, which is my favorite book series of all time currently. Like, even more than Harry Potter. It's that good.
And what era did these books come out in? Years?
I think the first one came out about 10 years ago.
Okay.
So they're relatively recent.
Yeah. Cool. And so have you written anything? Have you, like, submitted anything, like a short story to...
Yes,
like
actually.
a fiction magazine or website or anything like that?
Recently, just this last semester, I was the winner, the number one winner of the fiction category of the Joe Cleveland Writing Contest, which is a writing contest for short stories, poems, etc., put on by my school, Harding, and I won first place for short story.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was a pretty big honor. It surprised even me, really.
What was it about?
The title was Even Better Than the Real Thing, which is, of course, taken from the U2 song of the same name.
Well, fantastic inspiration. Go ahead.
And it was a sort of a Blade Runner-ish inspired, kind of cyberpunk-y, futuristic story about a young 20-something man who works at a coffee shop.
Right.
Very lonely, friendless sort of individual, and his only companion in life is this artificial intelligence that's sort of basically a super advanced version of Amazon Alexa, if that makes sense.
Okay,
and
got you.
Sort of runs his house, and this AI manifests in the form of this hologram of a human woman named Robin. And so it's sort of this character study of this young man sort of falling in love with his AI. Basically a really messed up version of the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix.
Right.
And just the tragedy that befalls as a result of this misguided affection for something that isn't even human.
Right. So you win the short story contest with this.
Yes,
now,
I did.
is this something, like, is this a story like, okay, I'm done with that, put that on the shelf, or is that something you'd like to explore more down the road?
I was thinking it was going to be something more along the former, just a little one-off peek into this world. But I certainly could do something more of it in the future. Anything's
Right.
possible.
So you took the title from the U2 song.
Yes.
Are you a U2 fan, or you just like that song?
No, I'm a big fan. They're probably like my top 5 musical artists of all time. And in fact, this coming Saturday, I've got tickets to a U2 concert in Nashville.
Really?
Yes.
I'm so envious.
Yes, I'm super hyped about that. Me and my parents are all going.
That's
So-
awesome.
Yeah, I'm super hyped about that.
I saw him
gonna be
on
big.
the 360 tour
Ooh, very
at
nice.
Vanderbilt. That was probably 2010, maybe?
Very cool.
2009, 2010. It was a great show. You're not going to be disappointed.
I'm certain of it.
What's your favorite album by U2? Octune Baby for, well, that's because that's where that song came from.
I'm more of a Joshua Tree kind of
Joshua
guy.
Tree, okay. Well, you know, the thing about U2 is they are not afraid to explore different styles
Absolutely.
and different sounds. I think Edge is totally underrated as a musician and guitar player.
Fun fact about The Edge, a sort of nerdy little tidbit as going along with the theme of the show, of course. He actually composed the opening theme song to the early 2000s Batman cartoon, The Batman.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He did.
Yeah.
I think they only used it for the first 2 seasons, though. Like, kind of halfway through the series, there was a tone change, and after Batgirl and Robin joined the series, they went with a more energetic, peppy, Adam West-ish sound.
Right. And so, but he recorded the original.
Yes, it's
or composed the original.
Yes, it was an instrumental track, so no vocals or anything, but it was very cool, dark, atmospheric piece.
Yes. So have you seen the YouTube documentary about the recording of the Joshua Tree?
I have not. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I may have to check that out.
It goes, like, they even follow them into Sun Records in Memphis, where they recorded
cool.
some of the stuff there. So it's really cool. It's a really cool documentary.
Memphis, I didn't know they recorded there.
Mm-hmm. They recorded at Sun Records.
I go through Memphis every time on the commute back and forth from school.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And one more YouTube fact. If you haven't seen the documentary, It Might Get Loud, with The Edge, Jack White, and Jimmy Page.
Oh, Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin.
From Led Zeppelin.
Cool.
And it's just a documentary about guitar playing. It's really cool.
Wow, I didn't know that was a thing. Very nice.
Yeah, it starts out with Jack White basically making a guitar. That's like the opening scene.
Wow.
He's on his farm here in Tennessee, and he's making a guitar.
That's cool.
Then they follow The Edge around, Jimmy Page around. It's really cool. It's a cool documentary.
Nice. Very, very nice.
Okay, so you're going to school. You write us a letter that you want. Why do you want to be an intern for the summer here?
Because I am a huge nerd.
Uh-huh.
And like this show, it's super cool. You'll talk about nerd stuff all day, like
Right.
movies, comics, TV, etc.
Right.
And
You have to play into what you know.
yes, absolutely. And so if I can get some valuable career experience having the sort of conversations that I already have with my friends
Right.
pretty much all the time, and I can do it for listeners from just about anywhere, for anybody to hear, for their listening pleasure.
Yeah.
That's just too good to be true.
Well, I don't know how valuable this will be as your career goes along, but it will certainly be fun.
I'm sure it'll be very valuable and very fun, certainly.
Now, we're going to get into, I actually give you an assignment to do, and we're going to get into that in a second. It's about TV. I want to start with, because we were speaking about this right before we started recording, the Infinity War, Avengers Infinity War.
Yes.
You've read Infinity Gauntlet.
Yes, the original comic book by Jim Starlin and George Perez.
Right. Jim Starlin created Thanos, right?
Yeah.
Thanos.
He created him as just a one-off Iron Man villain who was originally he was based on a Jack Kirby character, Metron, from the New Gods Fourth World comic book series. And Metron is like he's the guy in the fancy floating chair with all the like Tron-looking glowing lines all around him. Mm-hmm. And that was his original design. Thanos was something along the lines of that. But then I think one of the editors looked at that design and told him, Jim, if you're going to rip off one of the Jack Kirby New Gods characters, you got to rip off the really cool one, who, of course, is Darkseid, the Lord of Apocalypse.
Yep.
And so that's why Thanos has the really, bumpy-looking chin and all that, because his design was modeled after Darkseid. But, of course, over time, Thanos ended up being a much different character than what Darkseid is, because Darkseid, of course, he's the god of tyranny. He's all about order and the eradication of all freedom. He wants the anti-life equation so he can basically brainwash the entire universe into being obedient slaves. Whereas Thanos in the comics, he's a worshiper of death. Mm-hmm. He is literally in love with the embodiment of death, and he wants to kill all life in the universe to impress her, so that she'll love him back.
So do you like the bring balance to the universe story more than that?
Yes, I do, actually, because I think it humanizes Thanos. Mm-hmm. And I've always believed that the best villains are the ones that you can relate to and understand and sympathize with. You can listen to their motivations and think, that's super evil, but I get where you're coming from. Like they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think all my favorite villains, like Doctor Doom and Darth Vader, they want to bring peace and order to everything. They want to create basically their own twisted version of a utopia, because they're both very tragic figures who have lost so much because of chaos and destruction, unnecessary conflict. And so they want to create peace and order so that no one will ever have to go through that loss ever again. They want to make the world a better place, but at the cost of freedom. And of course, that's a very real struggle that is very much alive in the world today, in politics and everything like that.
So do you think one of the challenges that has faced the DC films up to this point is that their villains have lacked that sense of humanity and a connection? Like, because you can connect with, in the movie, what Thanos wants to do, you can connect with, just like you were talking about.
Yes.
Do you think that's one of the problems that the DC films have had, is their villains?
Sadly, yeah, I'd have to say so. I think General Zod, even though he could have been executed better, I think he was a good start because, again, going back to the understandable motives, he's a man who has lost everything. He lost his homeworld, which he loved very dearly, and he wants to terraform Earth into a new version of Krypton so that he and his species and his world can live again, even if it means destroying another world, which, I mean, he doesn't care about Earth. He just wants Krypton back. And so even though his methods are incredibly evil and destructive, you understand where he's coming from. He's a man who's lost his home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Ares and Wonder Woman, I think, even though we could have been explored a lot better, and so could General Zod, really. They're not perfect villains, but they're still better than others because they do have interesting parts to them. And Ares, in the comics, he's the god of war, and he's all about war and causing chaos and destruction, and battle is so glorious, bring me more people to fight. And they did something interesting in the movie, is that they made him this sort of well-intentioned extremist, kind of like what Marvel did with Thanos. And he wants to use war not as a means in and of itself, but as a means to an end, in order to end war, because he thinks that humans, they're inherently chaotic and destructive, and they need to be purged from this world so that there can be peace for the gods and for the animals and everything besides humanity. Mm-hmm. And I think that could have been explored better, but it was a good groundwork for an interesting villain, I think. And then, on the other hand, you have Enchantress in Suicide Squad and Steppenwolf in Justice League, who just...
You don't understand what they want to do.
No,
they never explain them. They're just thrown up there. There's no...
Yeah, they're just...
There's no motivation.
Yeah.
Or no understandable motivation.
Exactly. I don't even remember what Enchantress wanted to do. Like, I think there was one...
Well, she was trying to create a portal to bring...
I don't even remember.
Yeah, there was... I don't know.
And
then Steppenwolf was just trying to create them... Or find the mother boxes.
Yeah, which I think they could have done a much better job of exploring that sort of Jack Kirby New Gods mythos, because, like, if we knew more about, like, what's Apocalypse, what's New Genesis, what are the mother boxes, I think that would have been a much more interesting and kind of motivation that the audience could have been much more invested in. But instead, that stuff's never explained. The same with Aquaman and Atlantis. They're just throwing these terms and this backstory out there without any context, and the audience has no idea what's going on. It's like you came into the Avengers without watching any of the earlier Marvel movies, and you're still expected to know all this background info that you've never been given.
And I think that's because Warner Brothers and DC decided, mostly Warner Brothers probably, decided that Marvel got so far ahead of them, they wanted to hurry up and catch up to them in half the movies, or not even half the movies.
Yeah.
Like a third of the movies, and get exactly where they were in the storytelling process. And I think that's why we enjoy the Marvel movies so much. I mean, they're not all great. They're not all great storytelling. They're all pretty good.
I think most of them are great.
Yeah.
With a couple exceptions, like Iron Man 2, Incredible Hulk, Thor 2. Mm-hmm. But I think most of them are at least like a B+. I go as far as say more than half of them are like A quality.
Yeah.
But I'm the biggest Marvel fanboy ever, so I'm pretty biased. Doesn't take a lot to please me.
Right. But even take the whole that they're a comic book film or they're a superhero film out of it, they're still pretty good storytelling vehicles.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. And the story is entertaining.
Yeah, especially with Phase 3. I think Phase 3, Marvel's been on more of a roll than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's something Adam and I talked about last week, was that I think Winter Soldier is a high watermark, and
Yeah.
they was a turning point for the MCU, because
Definitely.
you could certainly see some signs where it might have got tired. And then Winter Soldier happened, and it kind of changed the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I think the best Marvel movies are the ones that don't feel like superhero movies. They are movies that happen to have superheroes in them, but like they're not using superhero as a genre like it has
Right.
been in the past. Like for instance, Thor Ragnarok is this big retro Star Wars Flash Gordon style space opera. Ant-Man is a heist movie. Doctor Strange is a fantasy movie. Stuff like that.
And something that Adam and I have talked about before, and I'd be curious to get your input on this, and we've mentioned this several times on the show, is that I think one of the reasons why the Marvel Cinematic Universe works as well as it does is that it started out very grounded with the original Iron Man. And even though it was a fantastic tale about the creation of Iron Man,
Yes.
there was no, Marvel, there was no space involved. He didn't go to space. The science, even though it's comic book science and it's film science, it was believable science that you could wrap your head around. And it was a pretty, and especially in comparison to what would happen, a pretty small movie to start
Yeah.
with too.
Definitely.
And they've slowly, it took, how many films was it? What was Guardians?
Guardians was, let's see, Iron Man, Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, Avengers,
Iron Man 3, Iron Man 3,
Iron Man 3,
Thor: The Dark World, right?
yeah, Captain America, and then Guardians. So it was like film 10 or something.
Yeah. Before you ever went into space.
Yeah.
Before it ever became really a fantastical tale. And now, and because they took their time and you slowly got there, and and it was how many films before you met Ant-Man,
Yeah.
and you went into the microverse, all these, comic booky things they took their time getting to.
Yes.
So now that we're here 10 years later, it's all, it all makes sense. It all fits into the narrative.
Yeah, 10 years later, I feel so old when
Yeah,
you
well.
say it like that.
Yeah, well, it happens.
Senior citizen, like I said.
That's only going to get worse as you go along.
Oh, yeah.
So to go back to Avengers: Infinity War.
Yes.
So we see that you've read Infinity Gauntlet,
Yes.
and spoilers if you haven't seen Infinity War.
Yes. Turn back now before it's too late.
And we've discussed what we think on the show, what's going to happen. First of all, do you think at any point, even if it's in the fourth movie or if Thanos continues past the fourth Avengers movie, do you think the Kate Blanchett character from Ragnarok, do you think she could come back and be kind of like that death character that you talked about from the comics?
See, I thought that's what they were going to do before I saw Ragnarok.
I did
because
too.
they kind of teased that in the comics with Thanos and Hela kind of having a romance of their own in the Thor comics recently. But then after I saw Ragnarok, and Hela gets that's the ship name. Thanos X Hela is Hela.
Yeah.
That's
Well.
like Brangelina. But yes.
So she could possibly come back.
I don't think she will because number one, Kate Blanchett, I have to imagine she's a pretty pricey actress to get.
Yeah.
And number two, she seemed pretty definitively killed when she was number one, she got stabbed by Surtur in his giant 100-foot tall form with his Twilight sword.
Right.
Which is just as big as he is. And after that, Asgard, the planet, blew up. It blew up with her still on it, as far as we know.
Right.
So I think that's a pretty definitive end.
Right. That's true. But I fell for that too. When I saw the trailer for Ragnarok, I really thought she was going to be like the Thanos love interest, and they were going to go the comic book storyline with it.
We're introducing a death goddess in the last movie before Infinity War. I wonder what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought.
Yeah, same here, but they went in I think they're going to go another direction.
So let's talk about that direction. Where do you think those that vanished at the end of Infinity War are?
Well, this is the kind of thing me and my friends from school, we talk about this kind of stuff all the time, and I've discussed this theory with them that maybe that the Avengers that got turned to dust in the sort of like post-Thanos snap rapture that happened, the snapture, if you will.
Oh, wow. I like that.
Yes.
I like that.
I made that up myself.
Copyright 2018.
I'm a true wordsmith.
Intern Barrett.
Yes. But yes, I think the Avengers that got vanished in the snapture, I think I did consider the theory that they might have been transported inside the Soul Gem.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
But I think that is the case for one character, and that would be Gamora. I think that, James Gunn has confirmed the Guardians 3 is happening, and I think Chris Pratt has confirmed he will be in Guardians 3. And I don't think you can have another Guardians movie without Gamora, especially since her and Star-Lord's romance became official in Infinity War. I don't think they're just going to leave her dead and continue with happy space adventures like nothing ever happened.
Though you could, they've introduced the original Guardians.
That's true. The Ravagers with Sylvester Stallone as Starhawk, Stakara Gord.
Yeah.
And his crew, including, I don't know if you caught this in the movie, but Miley Cyrus as the voice of Mainframe, the computer, which is just absolutely insane casting.
Right. Well, no more than Rocket Raccoon, Bradley Cooper.
Yeah.
Or Groot as Vin Diesel, or Vin Diesel as Groot.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, I think we will be seeing more of the Ravagers in Guardians 3, along with Adam Warlock.
Yeah. See? That should factor into the resolution of the story, right?
I don't think it will, because James Gunn has confirmed on social media that Adam Warlock will not be, even though he was a big player in the Infinity War comic, he was pretty much the main character besides Thanos.
Right.
But yeah, James Gunn's confirmed that Adam Warlock won't be appearing in Avengers 4, but he will be the central focus in Guardians 3. So we have that to look forward to.
Because we got teased Adam Warlock at the end of the last Guardians.
With the Sovereign Queen looking over his iconic cocoon and saying, I think I'll call him Adam. Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah. So where do you think they are if they're not in the Soul Gem?
I think they're for real dead, like for the time being.
Right.
But of course, we've had the general consensus is that time travel is going to be a central part of the plot, because of all those set photos with Cap and Loki in their Avengers 1 costumes and a visibly aged Tony Stark appearing right alongside them. Mm-hmm. So that makes a lot of people, including myself, think that Tony is gonna go back in time, either via the Time Stone or perhaps using the Quantum Realm, which will be further explored, and Ant-Man and the Wasp coming out this July.
I didn't think about that. So now this is something they teased. I saw on Instagram, because I tend to not look at the set photos, or because I have to, for us to talk about it or what's coming up, there's a little bit I need to know. But especially the last couple of years, I've tried to stay away from a lot of behind the scenes stuff. But I do know that right before Infinity War came out, there was an Instagram photo from the set of the next Avengers movie, and it featured the technology that Tony Stark introduced in Civil War at the very beginning when he actually went back.
Oh, the hologram stuff.
The hologram
with
stuff.
His parents,
with his parents.
Okay.
So there is a possibility that somehow he uses that technology to maybe, when we talk about, because you talked about Ant-Man as a heist movie and Doctor Strange as a fantasy movie, maybe this is like a mystery and he uses that technology to try to go back in time and find out what did they do along the way, so they don't physically go back in time.
Oh, okay.
But he's able to use that to recreate stuff that's happened in the past.
Wow, that I didn't consider that. That is entirely possible, but I'm not gonna put all my eggs in that basket.
Well, especially
yet.
when you have the time gem. So, I mean, you don't have to. You could travel through time.
Yeah.
And reverse time.
It's possible.
Or the reality gem could factor into it as well.
But that ties into another one of my big theories, which is I think Nebula is going to be the one to save the day. I think she is going to steal the gauntlet from Thanos, because that's exactly what happens in the Infinity War comic, is that after Thanos he's defeated all the heroes, including like the cosmic entities like Eternity, Infinity, the Living Tribunal, Galactus, all those heavy cosmic hitters. And Thanos uses the gauntlet to transcend his physical body and become the new eternity, the new embodiment of the soul of the universe. And as Thanos is going all, "Look upon my works, ye mighty in despair," like hamming it up, reveling in his victory, Nebula, who Thanos has been keeping as a captive by his throne this whole time, she manages to go by Thanos's unconscious body, because his soul has left his body at this point, and she takes the defenseless Infinity Gauntlet, puts it on, and turns back time to before Thanos did the snap that wiped out half the universe, which of course happened in the comic as well. And so I think that is what's going to happen in Avengers 4, because Nebula, of course, she's the only one of the Guardians besides Rocket who survived the snapping.
Right. And now you got it, the snapping. See,
Yes.
you're all full of great titles for this.
Yes.
The Snapture, the Snapping. All right, one more thing, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back and do your assignment.
Yes.
What do you think the name of the next Avengers movie is? You said you had a theory.
Yes. And this is partially supported by something the Russo brothers themselves confirmed, which is that I read on somebody posted this on Twitter the other day, that the Russo brothers said that the closest guess they've had to the Avengers 4 title is Avengers Forever, which Avengers Forever, that title is taken from a comic book series, which like a 12-ish issue miniseries or something like that, which features a group of Avengers from various points in time, past, present, and future, being banded together in order to stop Kang the Conqueror, who is a longtime Avengers villain from the comics, sees this time-traveling warlord from the future. And so, of course, that the fact that the Russo brothers said that was the closest guess they've gotten, that leads me to believe that, okay, time travel is still going to be involved, because forever, time travel, stuff like that. But they said that was the closest guess they've gotten. They didn't say the title is going to be Avengers Forever, which leads me to believe that it's going to be something similar, but not quite that. And I think I know what it's going to be.
Okay. Breaking news right here.
Yes. Title of Avengers 4, you heard it here first, Avengers Eternity.
That's pretty good.
Because forever, eternity, they got that connection in there, that similarity. So it qualifies as a close guess.
Plus, it would be a nice follow-up to Infinity.
Yes, Eternity, Infinity. And of course, going super nerdy here, deep in the comics lore, Eternity and Infinity are the twin cosmic abstract embodiments of the universe. Eternity is the collective life, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, of every life in the universe. Eternity is basically the Force from Star Wars. See, it surrounds us, binds us, penetrates us, stuff like that. Eternity is all the life in the universe given a not a physical, but a metaphysical personification.
Right.
It's kind of a crazy thing to wrap her head around but there it is. And Infinity is the same thing, for she is the embodiment of space. Eternity, infinity, time, and space. Except eternity is also life, and along with time. It's complicated. Cosmic marvel, especially when you get into the abstract stuff, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around at times. I've spent years trying to master it myself, and I don't know that I'm entirely there yet.
Well, I said one more question, but I do have this one, because I want to get your take on this. Who survives the next Avengers movie?
Well, I think... That's a good question. I'm not entirely convinced myself, but I think I do know who is going to die.
Okay.
Cap or Tony or both.
I think both.
Yeah, I think I have a good idea of how they're going to die. They're going to... Okay, this was set up in Infinity War because of the whole soul for a soul thing. You have to sacrifice a soul in order to use the soul gem.
Right.
And so I think Cap and Tony are going to sacrifice their lives, their souls, in order to bring back everyone that was killed in the Snapture by Thanos.
Right.
And so that's going to be, number one, how the Snapture gets reversed, how Spider-Man and Black Panther and all the other people we know are going to be in future movies, how they come back. But I think it's also going to be the big exit for Cap and Tony, because... Number one, Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr., their contracts got in sometime. And I think they've both been in the most movies so far. And so I think that's going to how they're going to get written out, because it's got to happen eventually.
And I don't know what more they could do with those characters.
I think their arcs have pretty much come to their natural conclusion.
I think so too.
I think Thor is going to survive though, because like his popularity is bigger than ever thanks to Ragnarok.
Right.
And especially setting up him teaming up the Guardians, I think he might be in Guardians 3 too. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think it is a possibility.
I would be totally down for that.
Yeah. Although I'd also be down for a Thor 4 directed by Taika Waititi.
Yes, that's true. That'd be good too.
Oh, speaking of Thor, it's been confirmed that Valkyrie survived the attack on the Asgardian ship, so we know she's alive.
Yeah, I don't think you could kill that character off as popular
Yeah.
as she was after Ragnarok.
No news on Korg and Mika though, which scares me.
What about Heimdall?
No, we saw him die for sure.
Loki?
I want to say yes, just because of how it was framed as just a really big deal. And on top of that, Thanos saying, "No more resurrections."
Yeah.
Which leads me to believe, okay, Loki's gone for good. And plus, it was a heroic exit, which brings a nice coda to his character arc, going from villain to anti-hero to full-on hero.
So if you go to see Avengers 4 next year, and all the characters, Loki, Heimdall, down to everyone that disappeared at the end, Vision, because I personally think Vision's gone.
I think Vision might be alive, actually. I think they might bring him back before the snapshot gets reversed.
Like Vision from the West Coast Avengers, Grey Vision?
Yes, because we saw his body turn gray after he died.
Mm-hmm.
So, and plus, Bruce set this up close to the beginning, that the Mind Stone is not the end-all be-all of Vision. He still has parts of Jarvis and Tony and Thor inside him and Ultron.
Mm-hmm.
That there's still enough Vision left that he can live on without the Mind Stone. So I think that Tony and Shuri, who was the best Disney princess, by the way, just saying.
Yeah, there you go, yeah.
I think they might work together to bring Vision back in order to take down Thanos.
I could be with that. But would you feel cheated if everyone came back? That there was really... because that's what I liked about Infinity War, was there was so much at risk, and there were so many stakes in this movie. And then if you go and see, and it's all resolved and you have a happy ending, and then you find out, oh, there was really no stakes in Infinity War. As a film fan, do you think you'd be cheated?
I don't think so, because number one, I love these characters and I want to see more of them.
Right.
And number two, I don't think their deaths would be meaningless because of all the lengths that the surviving heroes have to go to in order to fix their deaths, in order to bring them back.
Yeah.
So there's still a sacrifices that have to be made along the way, probably very literal sacrifices when it comes to Cap, Tony, and possibly Bruce, Natasha, and Clint as well.
That's true. Like, just wipe out all the original Avengers.
Maybe not Thor, though, because I think he, like, as popular as he's gotten after Ragnarok, I think he's still got a few more movies in him.
Now, to say along those lines, say Tony goes and Cap goes. Mm-hmm. Do you think you see Tony as an AI in later movies?
I don't think so. I think that once RDJ is gone, he's going to stay gone.
Like Iron Man's gone.
Yeah.
You don't see anyone taking up the Iron Man mantle.
Yeah. Well, I think...
War Machine.
That too, but I think in terms of Tony having a successor, a protege, a sort of metaphorical son, if you will.
In Spider-Man?
Yeah, Peter.
Yeah.
My boy Peter.
That's true. Oh, he could be the AI in Peter's suit.
Or
would that be too much?
It's possible. He already has Karen, though.
Yeah, that's true. And he's got a relationship with Karen.
Yeah.
Which goes back to the story that you wrote.
I don't think it's that kind of relationship.
All right. If you've listened, and you have, you know this is where we, about halfway through. We're going to take a break. We'll come right back, and we'll get into your assignment about TV shows and the golden age of television.
Hi, this is Siri. I would never ever listen to the Earth Station 1 podcast. Who the heck says howdy anyway? Why don't you listen to Chris Hardwick instead? I can get you his information. The Nerdist is everywhere anyway, haha. That was a joke. The Earth Station 1 podcast. It's time to let your inner geek out to play. You can find them at www.earthstation1.com or up on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or wherever fine podcasts are found. Peace, and we're done.
And as a reminder, we have the garage door open, and I think we're going to hear thunder and rain here in a second.
Yeah.
We're going to hear the God of Thunder coming in.
Thor's paying a visit, yeah.
Now, Barrett is our intern for the summer. He sent us a letter wanting to be part of the show as he's on summer break from school. And so I gave you an assignment.
Yes.
And I didn't want to know anything about this after I gave you the assignment because I want to hear everything that you researched, you found, you're bringing to us for the first time on the show. Here was the assignment I gave Barrett. I said, if it's true that we are in the new golden age of television, I wanted you to find the first 5 or 6 shows that in your research and in your opinion kind of brought us to this new golden age of television.
Yes.
And so now I will turn it over to you and let you review your findings, and I will ask questions along the way.
Yes, so I have done about 2 weeks of very extensive research and very extensive TV watching because of all the shows I picked, I didn't watch very many of them because I wasn't watching growing up TV when they were on originally. I was a child.
So what year would you say that this new golden era of television kind of started? Let's start there.
Well, I do believe that I have traced all of this back. All these great new shows that are airing right now, I've traced their supposed lineages, if you could call it that, all the way back to a single event in the late 90s. Or rather...
Oh, wow, this is awesome. I can't wait to hear this.
Well, rather than a single event, I should say a single entity, a single channel.
Okay.
And that channel, HBO.
I totally agree.
Home box office. Mm-hmm. It all began with HBO. It was the spark that lit the flame that burned down the First Order. Pardon the Star Wars reference. But yeah, it all started with HBO. In the late 90s, they already had some original programming, stuff like Tales from the Crypt. Right. And the sketch comedy series Mr. Show, starring David Cross from Arrested Development and Bob Odenkirk.
Which is a great show.
From a show that we might be discussing pretty soon. Foreshadowing.
I'm a big Odenkirk fan. He's good.
Oh, yeah. He's going to be in Incredibles, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's probably going to be the villain.
I think you're right.
Yeah, completely baseless prediction right there.
Well, anybody that's that confident in the trailer that we need to do good things is probably up to bad things.
Yeah. Going back to Robert Redford from Winter Soldier.
Exactly. Yeah.
Also underrated Marvel villain, I think.
Yes, and that's why I'm saying I think that's where the Marvel really started to turn with their villains was Winter Soldier. Because he was great.
But yeah, back on topic, HBO. Yeah, HBO already had some original programming in the 90s, but they wanted to branch out into more serious drama series because that's what really would rake in the audiences and the money as a result. And so because they were a cable subscription-only channel, they didn't have the limitations and censorship that broadcast TV had to deal with. And so that ended up attracting a lot of writers, storytellers, who wanted to tell bold new stories that they wouldn't be able to be told on regular TV just because of the content that came with telling those stories. Like, not necessarily like violence and sex and swearing for their own sake, but just as a natural byproduct of the kind of stuff you want to tell, because that stuff happens in real life, you know? And so that freedom, that lack of censorship, that attracted some writers like the creator of the TV show Oz, which aired in 1997, which was created by Tom Fontana. There we go. I don't know why I didn't have his name on my notes. But Tom Fontana was the creator of Oz, and that started airing on July 12th, 1997. And that was the first show of HBO's big, groundbreaking drama series. But that is not one of these shows I put in my top 5, because the next big show that came after that was... Can I get a drum roll?
Okay.
Was The Sopranos.
Yes.
That's my number 1 of 5, and that started airing January 10th, 1999.
Big show.
Yes.
Big following, and found a larger audience for HBO. I think they got a lot of subscriptions because of that show.
Yes. So the plan worked, in other words. And of course, all these shows, I picked them because of the impact they had on pop culture, as well as, especially with the earlier shows, on the shows that followed after them. And Sopranos, I saw a lot of that when I was watching Sopranos. Because
James Gandolfini was great in that show.
Oh yeah, that goes into what I was just about to say. Because the number one thing I think Sopranos did in order to influence the golden age of TV is that it started the trend of anti-hero protagonists on TV. There's a lot of Tony Soprano's DNA in Don Draper. There's a lot of the Tony Soprano in Walter White. Mm-hmm. And I may or may not be talking about those characters in the near future. More foreshadowing. But yes, Tony Soprano, great character, great protagonist. I loved how, I think the special thing about Tony Soprano is the dichotomy, the duality of, on the one hand, he's this kind of goofy, bumbling dad, but at the same time, he's a ruthless gangster who won't hesitate to kill anybody who gets in his way.
Right.
And that just made him such a well-rounded, three-dimensional character who was a lot of fun to watch. But at the same time, you want to root for him because he's so charismatic and entertaining. But he's a mafia boss. He does really bad things. He kills a lot of people. So, should I root for him? Should I not? It's up to you, the viewer, to find that out.
And I think in the run of that show, and I haven't seen all the Sopranos. I was kind of in and out.
Me neither. I only watched 6 episodes. But they were good episodes.
Did you watch the finale?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And I have thoughts, but that's a podcast for another time.
But I think you never totally rooted against Tony Soprano.
No, I don't think
there was never a point where maybe the audience turned on Tony. I think that did happen with one of the characters that we'll probably talk about coming up.
Yeah.
And also and I don't know how much more you have about The Sopranos, but I think another reason why The Sopranos worked was not only did they create a main character that you wanted to see, but also the supporting cast was great on that show.
And I think another big thing about The Sopranos that a lot of other shows did is that they mixed very grim and gritty drama with comedy. Mm-hmm. It wasn't totally joyless or the audience would just get depressed. There's also a lot of really fun characters, like the episode Pine Barrens, which is from all the research I did on alt critics doing these top 10 Sopranos episodes, stuff like that. That was one that kept popping up. It was this sort of wacky misadventure of two of Tony's gang members. They track down this Russian criminal who owes them money, and they bring him out to the middle of the woods in winter, the Pine Barrens in South Jersey, to execute him. But they don't count on him being a really strong fighter, and so he ends up getting away from them, and they have to spend the whole day wandering in the woods, kind of shooting the breeze. In the meanwhile, chasing after this guy who's gotten away from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great. I have seen that episode. Yeah. It's really good.
So yeah, Sopranos, it managed to balance drama with comedy very well, and the two things that I'm going to keep coming back to with all these shows that I think changed the landscape of TV more than anything is that the creators and the writers, they cared about good storytelling and good characters. Mm-hmm. That is, I think it sounds so simple when you say it like that, but I think that was the number one game changer and the thing that all these shows had in common. Now, speaking of the next show, number 2 on the list, first aired September 22nd, 2004, we have Lost.
Oh, okay. All right.
The only network show on the list, by the way.
Yeah. Little J.J. Abrams action.
Yes, J.J. Abrams, his first big hit, I think. And of course, man has, he's been going places in the world since then. First Star Trek and now Star Wars, The Force Awakens. Mm-hmm. He's the man who, not single-handedly, but he helped bring back the biggest sci-fi franchise, possibly biggest pop culture franchise ever.
True. I totally agree with that. And did a lot for network television with Lost.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because that was at a time where network television was becoming kind of a barren land for good TV. Mm-hmm. And Lost premiered. And I wasn't a Lost fan. I've seen maybe 2 episodes. But I do appreciate what that show did for television at the time.
I've seen about 10 episodes, and honestly, I'm not sure I'm such a big Lost fan either.
Yeah.
Personal opinion there, but I can definitely tell it did a lot for TV, and it had a lot of influence.
Yeah.
And it helped break a lot of new ground. It did things that were experimental and innovative that you just hadn't seen before on TV. Like especially, number one, with the storytelling, it did something very interesting that helped you get to know the characters, which was flashbacks. With most of the episodes that I saw, there was an A plot with the survivors trying to survive on the island, but there was also B plots with whoever the main character of that episode was, because there's not, even though we have a single protagonist in Jack, it's very much an ensemble cast with the focus jumping around from episode to episode. And whoever the focus character is of that episode, there's a flashback that helps you delve into their past and get to know them better. And that was very well implemented, I think, in one of my favorite episodes, Walkabout, which is where we first get to know the past of John Locke, definitely one of the standout characters of the show. Very experimental storytelling. And that got taken even further in at the end of season 3, I think, where I think the creators, what they did, they just sat down and the writers went, okay, we've done flashbacks. We've done all this crazy mystery stuff. What can we do to mess with the audience's heads even more? Flash forward. Not just showing back in time, but forward in time too. And like, I have mixed feelings on that, but it's something you've never seen before, definitely.
Well, and it's a point to one of the things that I think has made a difference in television over the last 15, 20 years or so, is that the creators are now trusting the audience to be invested in the story itself, rather than just being entertained by a formula. And a lot of what you saw in the 70s and 80s television was basically the same formula for that show played out week after week after week. This was going to happen, and it would be resolved by this, by some MacGuffin that was part of the show, or a plan laid out by the protagonist. It was going to be basically the same story week after week after week, just with different titles for the characters. And then what we've seen happen is that story become the most important thing in television.
Yes, I have to give Lost credit in that area. Is that they weren't afraid to change the status quo in very important ways, especially by killing off major characters, which is also something that we'll be seeing in future big shows like Walking Dead and Game of Thrones. Also, even though this wasn't on my top 5, I have to give a shout out to one of Lost's biggest influences, Twin Peaks. David Lynch, his probably magnum opus, like just so much craziness in that show, but I think it did one really big thing for TV, which helped set the ground for all of these shows, and it was one of the first big drama series to do serialized long-form storytelling. Not just a case of the week like you get in like police procedurals or sitcoms, what have you. It's one single narrative woven throughout the entire season, and you got that later with X-Files and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, also shows worth mentioning. But Twin Peaks was the first to do it, and Lost helped repopularize it for the new century.
Oh, yeah. Twin Peaks was 25 years ahead of its time, for sure. I mean, what he was doing on network television. It's crazy that show was on network television.
Yeah.
Number 3?
Yes, number 3. First airing on July 19th, 2007 on AMC, we have Mad Men.
Yep.
Don Draper, another great anti-hero protagonist. The kind of guy who you think, this guy, he's just a total sleazebag. I hate him. But then at the same time, he has a very human and vulnerable side that you see over the course of the series. So another one of those great anti-hero characters who you're never really sure if you want to root for him or against him, but he's a blast to watch all the same, the whole way through. Wonderfully played by John Hamm, great actor.
And a really fun period piece for television.
Oh, absolutely.
Very well done.
I think another one of the things that helped it stand out, besides the great characters and great storytelling, universal factor right there, but the fact that it was a period piece and helped explore an era that we don't see very often on TV, which is the 60s. And I think it helped shine a light on how the 60s was kind of awful.
Yeah, it's true, because the TV shows of the 60s were not portraying the 60s as to how they really were.
Oh, no. And like so much moments that I like when I was watching, I took to calling them oof moments, OOF, oof, because just moments where a lot of the predominantly old white male staff of the ad agency, they just show like so much
misogyny.
Insensitivity in general to everyone who's not an old white guy.
Yep.
That's like would not fly today. Political correctness was not a thing in the 60s.
No, it
like,
was not.
And one of the first scenes of the show, we have Peggy Olson, one of my favorite characters of the show, by the way. Like my number one favorite character, because like she's one of the few characters that isn't a huge jerk. Like you really want to root for her, but more on her later. Her first day on the job, she's getting shown around the office by Joan, played by Christina Hendricks, great actress, by the way. Loved her in Firefly. And like when she gets to the typewriter on her desk, like Joan says to her, "Oh, it seems complicated at first, but even though men usually use them, they're made so easy to understand that even women can do it." And I was like, "Oof,
Yeah.
oof, that is rough right there." There's a lot of stuff like that in the show, but like I think that's part of its, I don't want to say charm, but like it's one of the great things about it that it shows very cold, accurate look about, hey, the 60s were kind of terrible in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It doesn't shy away from that.
Yep.
I think the fact that it's set at an ad agency sounds like kind of a boring premise at first, but it's really interesting because number one,
What more competitive world could you place a show in than ad agencies in the
definitely.
1960s?
I never considered that, but you're totally right.
Yeah.
And it helps illustrate just how big of an impact ads have, not just on pop culture, but on culture in general. As a writer, I really enjoyed seeing the creative process that goes into all these ads. Like my favorite episode of the entire series that I saw was the episode The Suitcase, which most of the episode is devoted to Don and Peggy just sitting in an office going over ideas for a suitcase commercial and like, how do we sell this on people? And it sounds boring, but it's a lot of fun just because, number one, the creative process and the great characters. Speaking of the characters, I want to take a moment to talk about Peggy Olson because she is my favorite character in the show because she is the one character that you can absolutely root for beginning to end. And you watch her start out as this lowly secretary who gets stepped on by all the guys in the office. And she ends up, through her just skill alone, she ends up earning her way to like one of the biggest ad executives in the agency. Like she's definitely a self-made woman. And that's so gratifying to see in a time where women were pretty much treated like garbage.
Very socially different in the 1960s. Yeah, especially in the workplace.
Yeah, they say that the more things change, the more they stay the same. But I think, like, after watching Mad Men, it's clear to see that we have made a lot of progress socially. Still a long way to go, but there has been progress. Speaking of progress, progressing to show number 4.
Look at
on
this,
the
you're
list.
natural
Yes.
for segues.
Absolutely. Drum roll. First airing January 20th, 2008, also on AMC. Of course, what could it be except Breaking Bad?
Yep, totally agree. Game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people say it's the number one show to ever air on television. And honestly, I can't even argue with that because this show is so good. I love it so much.
It is, in my opinion, it is obviously the best character study ever on television. To take the character of Walter White when you first meet him.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, diagnosed with cancer, trying to find a way to pay for it, that he doesn't destroy his family. And then where you see Walter White by the end of that series.
Yeah.
Is just, it's the best character study ever done on television.
He goes from this very meek, mild-mannered science teacher who gets no respect from his coworker, his students, his family, from anybody, and he ends up becoming Heisenberg. The one who knocks.
Yeah.
This utterly terrifying, ruthless crime lord who will just stop at nothing to get what he wants, no matter how many people he has to hurt or kill in the process.
And it's a cautionary tale.
Yeah,
because it is a great cautionary tale about how if you stop paying attention to the things in life that should matter, the kind of person that you could become.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because he has beliefs at the beginning of it that he gets away from. He totally gets away from his family. They're not important to him anymore, or at least as important to him anymore. And once you take those safeguards out of your life, that's the road you can see yourself going down.
Yeah, definitely. The character of Walter White reminds me a lot of Macbeth.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
The great Shakespeare character.
That's a good comparison.
Showing my English major status right here. Because they're both characters who start out as very noble, moral people. They're both family men. They're good guys that they have good moral standards, but once they get that hint of power, they say power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's absolutely the case in both characters. Macbeth, he hears the prophecy from the witches, and that plants in his head the idea, what if I do become king? Like, what if I do become the most powerful man in the entire kingdom? And they're both characters who think at first, oh, I'm doing this for good reasons. I'm still a good guy. I'm doing this for the greater good. But the more power they get, the farther they go down the slippery slope and become these just horrible, irredeemable villains. Mm-hmm. And with Walter White, that first prophecy, so to speak, that first glimpse at power is when he's watching TV at his birthday and he sees that on the news that the meth lab that got taken down, and he sees that massive table full of big wads of money, and he sees, oh, so that's the kind of money that you can get from selling drugs. I need money to provide for my family, to pay for my cancer treatments. I have the chemistry. Maybe I should do this. I mean, it's for my family after all. Why shouldn't I? Mm-hmm. And so that's how he starts down the road of Breaking Bad.
Yeah, and that's the character I'm talking about. Like, you can sympathize with Walter White at the beginning of the series, and by the end of it, until the redemption in the last episode, but I would say at least the last season and a half or 2 seasons, you cannot cheer for Walter White.
Absolutely.
Or at least I can't.
Yeah. At the end of season 4 is when Walt has his final showdown with the main villain of the whole show up to this point, Gus Fring, who, by the way, phenomenal villain, probably one of the best we've ever seen on TV. Mm-hmm. And after Walt finally defeats Gus, there's still a season left, and I think Walt takes over as the main villain of the show at that point.
I agree with that.
Like, he's the protagonist, but he's also the big bad.
Yeah.
And the fact that you have a character who can pull that off so well, play both those roles and do them perfectly, that just goes to show not only the writing from Vince Gilligan, but also the acting by Bryan Cranston.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I think Jesse becomes the protagonist in the last season.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, talking about dramatic character journeys, Jesse, he starts out as this kind of a dumb, like, wannabe gangster scumbag. Mm-hmm. And over time, you start to see more dimensions of him. And as he starts to lose more and more people that matter to him, like, he starts to become this very much more sensitive, soulful, moral kind of character. And he ends up getting... Spoilers, by the way, for the show that's been over for like 5 years.
Right.
He ends up getting a happy ending in the end, which I think he earned it after all that he's been through at that point.
Hopefully happy, but he's still wanted.
I looked it up, and Vince Gilligan confirmed that there's a very short scene in the last episode, easy to forget, where right before we see Jesse being held captive by the neo-Nazis, there's a brief vision of him like having this quiet, peaceful life as a woodworker. Uh-huh. Vince Gilligan confirmed that that's a flash forward to him after the events of the series. So he gets his happy ending.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Yeah, because that's really the only person left that you can cheer for by the end. Because even the journey that you have with Jesse in that last season is you have the fears as he tries to go against Walter White. And it's the fears that you have for any good guy in a situation like that, I don't think you can take down this bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're going against somebody that you can't beat. And he couldn't.
One could call Jesse the Tony Stark facing off against Walt Thanos.
Yes.
And they're not Infinity Rocks, they're Infinity Minerals, Marine.
That's a funny line.
Full circle.
Yep.
But yes, and one more thing to say about Bryan Cranston. No less a personage than Sir Anthony Hopkins, Hannibal Lecter, the Allfather Odin himself, the creator of Westworld. He praised I have the quote for him praising Bryan Cranston's performance as, quote, "Your performance as Walter White." Now I should do this in an Anthony Hopkins voice. "Your performance as Walter White was the best acting I have ever seen, ever."
Wow, that's high praise.
Yeah. Like,
Can you do the line from Silence of the Lambs at the end? That's close. That's good.
but yeah. And also, one last thing before moving on from Breaking Bad. We have to talk about the supporting cast. Like, not just Walt and Jesse and Gus, but also Jonathan Banks as Mike Ehrmantraut, Bob Odenkirk as Saul Goodman, now the protagonist of his own show, Better Call Saul, which I haven't watched yet, but I probably should at some point.
It's really good. Yeah. It's really good.
And then you have all the...
Because Mike's in it, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have Dean Norris as Hank, and all the minor characters like Badger and Skinny Pete. Like, such a great cast. Like, even the... like most like minor secondary characters are insanely memorable. Definitely one of the best shows, if not the very best show we've ever seen on TV.
Except for one, apparently. Well, I guess this isn't the best shows on TV.
One of the most recent best shows on TV.
Yeah.
So we arrive finally to first airing April 7th, 2011 on HBO. It had to be, of course, Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. And this is the one show that I actually watched beginning to end before doing all this research for this assignment. And it's also the only show that is still on the air right now.
Yeah.
Well,
of all these shows, yeah.
Yeah, well, not on the air currently, of course, but still got one season left to go next year. And I cannot wait because I love Game of Thrones so much.
Can you explain to me why everyone loves Game of Thrones so much?
Oh, you're not a fan of it?
I've seen maybe an episode.
But
see, I'm not a real high fantasy fan, so...
That's fair. And let me tell you, I gotta say, I was right there with you until last year. Because everything I had heard about Game of Thrones saying, oh, it's so dark and gritty. It's not like other fantasy stories. People die. And there's all this sex and violence and, it's political intrigue. It's twists and turns. It's so good. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like my kind of thing. Like, I like the usual fantasy stories, like Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones. I was going to say Game of Thrones again. Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, stuff like that. That, while can go dark places, certainly, is usually lighter fare and doesn't have the very bleak and unforgiving tone that Game of Thrones does. And so I was very skeptical on it at first, but then my mom, who is a diehard fan, like, she's read all the books and everything, like, she, like, eventually, like, when the most recent season started airing, like, she forced me to sit down and watch the entire series with her because she knew that I would like it. And guess what? I did. I was hooked because even though the tone isn't usually my thing, it had those two factors that all these shows have had, and that's good writing and great characters. And that is what carried the show for me.
What's your favorite character on Game of Thrones? Is it Jon Snow? Because that's really the only character I know. Oh, and I also know the Mother of Dragons.
I think you mean Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, first of her name, the Unburnt, Queen of the Andals and the First Men, Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea, Breaker of Chains, and Mother of Dragons.
Oh, did I say Queen? Or did I say Mother?
You said Mother of Dragons.
Okay.
But yeah, that's her whole title right there. Like, try and fit that on a business card.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
Like, I don't want to mess with that person who has that many titles. Ugh.
And Peter Dinklage. What's his character? Tyrion Lannister.
Tyrion Lannister,
Yeah.
yes. He is my favorite. He gets all the best lines.
You know, the only episode I've seen, he had to live in a box while it was being shipped.
Yeah.
I guess that was a season premiere one year, wasn't it? Where
maybe.
He escaped whatever happened.
I binged the entire series in like a week, so it's kind of a blur.
So is the Red Wedding really one of the best things ever on television?
No, not
Nope.
really.
Okay.
Like, it was definitely an important story moment, but I wouldn't call it like one of the best episodes.
Yeah.
I think like these last couple seasons have been, personally for me, they've been the highlight of the series for me because of all this like crazy stuff happening with all these different factions with their own unique power players colliding and alliances being formed and alliances being broken and all these big crazy battles. And of course the magic stuff keeps ramping up with the White Walkers, who are basically the frost giants for Thor. and they're coming, and they're bringing like a zombie apocalypse of all things. Like, not only is this like a medieval political intrigue story, but we've also got zombies in here, so that's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
But yeah, I think I really love these last couple seasons, and I think what makes Game of Thrones so great, besides all the characters, and there's like so many, like, of course we talked about Tyrion and Daenerys and Jon Snow, but also the other Lannister siblings, Cersei and Jaime, who both have had very interesting character journeys, and more supporting characters like Brienne of Tarth and Varys and Littlefinger and Arya Stark, and you probably don't know any of these names because you've only seen one episode, but
Well, my wife's a big fan.
people listening to this podcast will know who all those characters are and why they're awesome.
I get some of it through osmosis.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, Brienne of Tarth, played by Gwendolyn Christie, a.k.a. Captain Phasma in Star Wars.
I did know that.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of Star Wars, I neglected to mention Rian Johnson, director of The Last Jedi, also did 3 different episodes of Breaking Bad. So all goes back to Star Wars, all these shows.
Oh, wow. And that's where we started.
Not Sopranos and Mad Men. And Daenerys herself, Mother of Dragons, Emilia Clarke, she's going to be in Solo coming out at the end of the month. Mm-hmm. I'm super hyped to see that, by the way.
I'm glad you are.
Yes.
Because the person who usually sits in that seat could care less. Or couldn't care less. Because if he could care less, that means he does care. At least a little bit.
Yes. I see you have listened to the Weird Al song Word Crimes. Game of Thrones, great characters, but also I think that the whole anyone can die factor, that whole thing of like not being afraid to kill off main characters, because I don't suppose you've seen the first season, but the main character, the hero at the start of the series, is Ned Stark.
Right.
Who, played by Sean Bean, Boromir, from Lord of the Rings, and he stands out in the cutthroat, ruthless world of Westeros, where everybody will do anything to get ahead, get more power, but not Ned Stark, because he is a man of honor who loves his family and his country, and he has morals that he will not compromise no matter what. He's the Steve Rogers of Westeros, basically,
Right. And
he ends up dying at the end of the first season. So main character dead.
Season 1.
Yeah, season 1.
Now, have they gotten past the books at this point?
Yes, they got past the books at season 6, and season 7 is the most recent one that's aired.
Yeah.
So we're uncharted territory right here.
And so what do we have? I'm trying to remember. So it comes back in January, and that's the final season, correct?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Next year, definitely. Don't know about January. I hope it's January because I can't wait. Mm-hmm. I am so looking forward to it. And also, one more thing. I think one of the things that has helped Game of Thrones break new ground is that it has the biggest budget we've ever seen on TV. Like, it is cinematic quality every episode, especially in the most recent season. And again, HBO, less limitations, so we have every episode is a full hour, not just 44 minutes.
Right.
So there's basically like a mini movie airing every week with just really great cinematic quality special effects and these huge big budget battles like Helm's Deep level. Mm-hmm. And like dragons. Like dragons are there and they're cool.
I do understand there's dragons.
Yes, there are dragons and they are awesome.
So Game of Thrones, you think is the most of this new golden age of television? That's probably the biggest show.
Well, currently, yes. Mm-hmm. Because Breaking Bad, I would say, is the best one, but it ended 5 years ago.
Right.
But Game of Thrones, definitely biggest show on TV right now.
Honorable mentions?
I do have several honorable mentions,
okay.
Yes. If I had to round this top 5 out to a top 10, I would say Walking Dead.
Agreed.
Also very influential.
Agreed.
Going back to before Sopranos, earlier in the 90s, you had stuff like Twin Peaks, like I said, very influential. West Wing, one of my favorite shows. Aaron Sorkin, very good stuff. Also, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Joss Whedon, director of the Avengers, like that's where he got a start.
One of the most underrated shows of all time. That and Angel.
I haven't seen either of them. I just know that they were really good. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You got time.
Yes.
They're on Netflix.
It's a long summer.
Yeah.
And also, finally, to round out the top 10, The Wire.
Mm-hmm.
I have not
Everybody
seen
loves The Wire.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it, but it's also HBO, and apparently it's really good stuff. That's where Michael B. Jordan, Killmonger, got a start. So
I haven't seen Black Panther yet.
you haven't seen Black
I
Panther?
haven't seen
Well,
it
the
yet.
good news is it's still in the theaters because people
know.
are still going to see it.
I
So
know.
honestly, like even though it's still in theaters, I think it's like available to buy on digital now.
think so.
Like you can just do that whenever.
Imagine my surprise when I saw Winter Soldier all thawed out in Infinity War.
Yeah.
So
The post-credit scene of Civil War was him being taken to Wakanda. So
right, and putting back into the carbonite. No, it wasn't carbonite.
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is a fantastic first assignment,
Yes, there you have it. The golden age of TV, where it all began.
and I appreciate you doing that. And it's going to be fun. So
Yeah.
the way this is going to work is you're going to take something like that and then spend a couple of weeks on it, and then come back and present your findings.
Okay, very
And
cool.
hopefully Adam will be here.
I
point.
one can hope. Traitor.
Yeah. But then that is the most comfortable chair we have in the garage.
I guess I quite like this chair. I'm very fond of it.
Yeah.
I like this chair. I never.
Well, Barrett, you did a fine job on this one, and I appreciate it.
thank
Not
you.
just more than a fine job. You did a great job.
Well, thank you very much. I had a lot of fun doing all that research. I honestly, my only regret is that I couldn't watch all these shows all the way through because they were all just really fantastic, except maybe for Lost. But it was influential. I
Yes.
can recognize its impact.
It's very influential. And I can't wait to see what you do the rest of the summer with the various things that we're going to do. And I can't wait for you to come back.
Same here. It's going to be a good ride.
This has been a production of the Adam and JP family of on-demand talk radio.
AdamandJP.com.
Right now.